Hello there. It's time to get cooking again. Now that we're at home all the time, what's better than the smell of fresh baked bread coming from our oven? And it can be really simple. Now at school we have our bread robot to do all the work, and if you're doing it all by hand, bread can be a bit of a chore. But with the 5-minute artisan bread method, you're going to have to time me on this, but it really is very simple because the way it sits, it breaks down the gluten and you eliminate the need for kneading. All right, you can make this super simple with these 4 basic ingredients: flour, salt, yeast, and water, warm water. But I don't like to do things simple. I like to make things a little interesting. So as long as you have this equivalent of 6.5 cups of dry ingredients, that's mostly flour, then you can embellish or add or just make a lot of different variations. Some of the variations I like to use are, I would add a cup of oats, so it would be less flour, but I would add a cup of oats or a cup of cornmeal. Today I'm going to add a little bulgur wheat that I've soaked in water. That's like cracked wheat. You'll notice that there's no sugar or sweetener in here. You'll notice there's no kind of dairy in there, but that doesn't mean you can't put it in. In fact, I have some molasses or honey I can use, and that'll just make a little more activity. I happen to also have vital wheat gluten in my house, and I might throw in a tablespoon or 2 of that just to help encourage all that stretchy dough action. I will probably throw in a little yogurt just to give it a little dairy, or you could add some milk powder. And you could also add a little bit of vegetable oil. These extra ingredients will just add some flavor and complexity to your loaf. So again, start with this basic proportions and then go from there. Now I just happen to have a dough bucket that I like to use when I make this thing, because this is going to make 3 loaves of bread. And the cool thing about the recipe is you can mix this together, set it aside for as little as 3 hours. Then you can scoop out enough dough just to cook 1 loaf of bread. And then you can set this thing aside, and maybe when that loaf is gone, you'll scoop out the 2nd loaf. And then that is gone, you can scoop out the 3rd loaf. So you can always have fresh hot bread from the oven. So, 5 minutes. The 5 minutes is measuring these ingredients, mixing in the water, and stirring it together. So you're going to have to trust me on this. I'm going to get everything ready. I have to get my warm water, and then we're going to mix it together. We'll check the time and see if we really can put it together in 5 minutes. Now, tomorrow or in 3 or 4 hours, you're going to have to shape your loaves, and that's not counted in these 5 minutes. That's extra. Okay, so let me go get some hot water or warm water, and then we can start mixing. All right, I'm back. I got my hot water waiting for me over here. I got my cracked wheat, which has been sitting in a little bit of warm water too, so it's getting a little bit soft. This part is perfect for doing with your kids, because all they have to do is scoop, and you can help you count out the 6.5 cups of flour. I have a mixture of whole wheat and white flour here, and I'm going to check my clock. It's 15 minutes after the hour. So We're going to count out 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do 4 of unbleached and 2 of whole wheat. 1, 2, 2 and 4 is 6. That's right. And that's going to go over there. I'm going to count my cracked wheat was half a cup of cracked wheat mixed with some water. I'm going to count that as my half a cup. Okay, but again, you could use oatmeal or cornmeal. A tablespoon of salt. Of course, I forgot my measuring spoon. All right, tablespoon of kosher salt. That's what all the gourmet cooks like to use. Okay, and I did mention that I have the vital wheat gluten. I'm going to add a tablespoon of that too. That'll just make it that dough extra stretchy when it comes to rise. Okay, those are my dry ingredients. I'm going to stir those around. Oh, the yeast. Can't forget the yeast. I'm going to open that up and add a tablespoon of the yeast. Okay, that gets closed. I'll stir my dry ingredients together. Well, I got that cracked wheat is not dry. And then we need our 3 cups of warm water. But you know what? I'm going to add a little glug of vegetable oil. Which adds more elasticity, and I think the loaf will keep longer, fresher, if it has a little oil in it. And I'm going to add a glug of molasses, because I love molasses, molasses, it's icky, sticky goo. Molasses, molasses, it always sticks to you. That's a song my dad used to sing to me. Here's my warm water. I'm going to add 3. 1, 2, and let's see, sometimes depending on the moisture level of your flour, it might need a little more. Now, this is the only part where you really need muscles. You want your dough to be a lot moister than you would if you were kneading it by hand. So I'm actually going to add another half cup of water. It should look pretty sticky. And you want to make sure you get all that dry ingredient mixed in. But unlike, the muscle power you need for kneading, it is very moist and sticky. Okay? That's it. Okay, let's see what the clock says. 5 minutes exactly. How about that? So what I just need to do is find a place that's not too cold, not too drafty. I have a lid for my dough bucket. You could put a cloth or a little cling wrap, not real tight, if you're just doing it in a bowl. And this is just going to sit for, I think the recipe says at least 2.5 hours, but you could leave it overnight. You could leave it a couple days. The longer you leave it, the more sort of a sourdough flavor it's going to have. It's going to be a very hearty loaf. It's going to taste great. So all we have to do is sit this aside and wait for the yeast to do its magic. Okay, I'll be back when this is ready to shape into loaves. Easy, right? So here we are back again after our 5-minute artisan bread has been sitting overnight. And you can see all the little air bubbles here. That's the yeast working. And it has risen quite a bit. So I'm going to show you how to shape the loaves. Now this should make about 3 loaves of bread. You can make them, put the bread into a regular loaf pan, or you can shape just a round loaf on that. So let's do one of each. So I'm going to prepare my loaf pan with some cooking spray and set that aside. And then I'm going to scoop out, try and guess about a third, however much it's going to take to fill that loaf. I'm going to get my hands my nice clean hands full of flour, because it is going to be a little sticky. And you can see all the bubbles. That shows that the yeast, and it's almost becoming a sourdough because it's been sitting so long and sort of regurgitating itself and stuff like that. This one I ended up putting a couple of extra ingredients like cracked wheat. So it should taste really interesting. I'll keep my flour nearby. So first I'm going to shape my just conventional loaf. I'm just going to keep a lot of flour on the board and sort of shape it into a log like that. Now, because it's been sitting and churning and digesting and things like that, that's why you don't really need to do the kneading. The gluten has woken up. The gluten's gotten really stretchy because it's very wet. And so all that kneading that you do in a conventional loaf, you don't really have to do. That was it. I made it into a log. It's going to go in here. It's going to rise for about 20, 30, 35 minutes. What you want to do is, to test if it's ready, is you poke your finger in there, and if it springs back only a little, like your finger can stay in there, that means it's ready. If it doesn't spring back at all, that means it hasn't puffed up enough. It needs more time to rise. So that was our loaf load. Get a little more flour here. And I'm going to leave a loaf worth for tomorrow's loaf. What I'm going to do is sort of go around like in a circle. I'm going to tuck and turn, 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 tuck and turn. Now this part with all the little tucks in it, that's going to be the bottom of my loaf. I'm just going to flip it over, and look how nice that looks. I'm going to get it on my pan. I'm just going to put that right there. I'm going to find a nice clean dishcloth and let that rise for about 20, 25. I'm going to check it in about 20 or 25 minutes. Might need about 10 minutes more than that. Okay, it's looking good. All right, we've given this a nice rest. It's risen a little. It will rise a little more in the oven. Poke it a little, and it keeps that little dimple that I pushed in. It doesn't spring back. So I'm going to say, even though it doesn't look like a dramatic rise, that it's ready for the oven. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees. I'm going to set it for about 40 minutes, and hopefully it will spring up and rise a little more as it cooks. I'm going to try a nice little dramatic slash in my round loaf. I'll get my sharpest knife, and I'm going to try a nice dramatic slash. Here we go. And we'll see what happens with that. Okay, it's in for the oven. Hope it rises some more. Ooh, there goes my timer. Let's check the bread and see how it looks. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh, we got a nice rise on both there. My little round loaf. And here's my sandwich loaf. It did pop a little more than just like I was hoping. And I'm sure glad I put that little split in the hot slash that loaf right before I went in. That made it look really good. All right, these look perfect, and Remember, I still have another loaf that's just going to mature and get a nice sort of sourdough flavor. If I, after I finish eating both these loaves, I still have one more. So that's the cool thing about our 5-minute artisan bread is it's very little effort. You take away a lot of that fussiness about kneading and things like that, and it just sits there and waits till you're ready to cook it. All right. Happy baking! Send me a photograph of your loaves when they're done.